Welcome to LOA Today. I'm Walt with Louis D'Souza today on this Monday, August the 12th, 2019. It is 8 a.m. in New York, that's 5 a.m. Los Angeles time, and that's 1 p.m. in London, 9 p.m. in Tokyo, 10 p.m. in Sydney, Australia, but wherever you are in the world, thank you for joining us for another episode of LOA Today, your daily dose of happy.
We are going to do a new form of grieving today here on the show because Louis and I have both been through the loss of a major figure in our lives. I lost my mom, he lost his dad, and that's one of those situations where traditionally, in most cultures, that's a time for grieving. It's a time for sorrow. It's a time for being really upset about what's going on and comforting people and so forth. And we've both been experiencing a lot of that from people we know. But we're here to tell you it doesn't have to go that way. And that's really the theme of our show today. It's kind of a strange thing, isn't it, Louis? Because you and I both have an understanding of how the universe really is structured and how we all connect to it. And we really truly are immortal. We truly, this physical life may end, but we go on beyond that. We go through multiple, living situations endlessly. We're constantly the creative otters of the universe, just playing and enjoying things and so forth. And that just doesn't jive with traditional religious viewpoints. It just doesn't work.
Yeah. Good morning, everybody. And I completely agree with you. Walt, they're dead.
But we were both just talking just before starting the podcast about how we've both been experiencing people, very, well-meaning people, caring people in our lives, reaching out to us in our time of need. And I imagine your experience has been somewhat similar to mine in that I don't need the consolation. And I mean, they're well-meaning, that they care, and you thank them and you appreciate them, but you try to assure them, I really don't need it. Thank you very much. And they just give you this look like, are you sane?
Yeah, Walt, it always stems for me from a point of view that you really come to understand with the LOA Abraham Hicks teachings that, your source energy that chooses a vibrational interpreting machine to play with the contrast in the time-space reality we call Earth. And, once you get that you are mostly non-physical energy, that you are source energy who is tagging along this little vibrational interpreting machine, then you kind of get where your parents are.
Yes. Yeah.
You kind of get that you're now looking for their source energy to chat to communicate to be with. And you learn from Abraham that you can't talk to them unless you're happy. Unless you're in a good high vibrational place. So, the sooner you snap out of, the feeling sorry for yourself, which I find is one of the biggest things I've experienced when I've lost somebody. It's not feeling bad for them or worrying about them or anything. It's just feeling that loss, They won't be there anymore. I won't be able to go home anymore. I won't.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Once you get over that and if you have a strong love bond with the individual, you really can, if you get to the high vibrational place, you can talk to them and you can have experiences with them. And, I've experienced that with some. As yet, I haven't had any with my dad. But, things have got to change and for me and for maybe him in getting used to the non-physical again from the level of clarity that he's experiencing. It's really interesting. I'm looking forward to the time when I do have experiences like I did with my mom, in a kind of meditation type dream state where I had some good communications with her after her death. And of course, the body is younger version, healthier and looking version. And, it's really great. Just give me 1 second there.
Yeah, no problem. Actually, while you're doing your little adjustment there, I will add on and I will kind of pile on to what you're talking about because I experienced very much the same thing when my dad passed 10 and a half years ago. Since then, shortly after that, actually, I had a number of different incidents where I was connected to him. One particular where there was a dream sequence that was just unbelievably real. But I also noted that with my dad's passing, I had done all of my grieving actually before he died. And I've talked about that before. Mm-hmm. And in fact, the grieving, I mean, yes, certainly there's one's own sense of loss, like, oh, he's not going to be there anymore. But in my dad's case, it was also, he was going through something pretty miserable. I mean, I won't describe it because I don't want to bring anybody down, but it was not a happy thing to go through. And by the time he was ready to pass on, it was a relief, not just to me, but to my entire family. We were just glad for him, like, oh, thank goodness he's
a relief
finally
for
let
him
go.
too, I'm sure.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, you talked about getting used to the other side. I don't really get any sense from talking to people who have psychic abilities that there's any real adjustment period. It's like, bang, you're there. Like, oh yeah, let's party. There's not a whole lot of, oh God, I don't know if I can handle this.
You know, you're probably completely correct there. We don't remember it that clearly, do we?
Right. But, that was, it was actually, I won't say a life-changing experience. It was an eye-opening experience to go through that with losing my dad 10.5 years ago. And I think that kind of prepped me for losing my mom a couple weeks ago because I'd already been through my own self-education that goes along with that because we learn about ourselves as we go through a situation like that.
It's a big growth period, I agree.
It is. Yeah, it's a big growth period. I imagine, I obviously I haven't gone through this because my parents died later. For somebody who loses a parent, like my wife, she lost her parent when she was 21. That's probably a more difficult shift to go through. I know it is. I'm just having talked to her because of the shock of it is greater, the surprise is greater. And depending on where you are with your own spiritual development and understanding, you can also feel more afraid, more, disconnected, more, oh my God, vulnerable, all that stuff, right? Yeah. So clearly the way that I've gone through it has been a lot easier than for many people. But still, no matter what age, no matter when it happens, you still go through it. You still go through losing that parent. And when they're gone, it really comes down to how do you feel about yourself? And that sounds so strange. It sounds so selfish to say that, but it really is true. How do you feel about yourself?
Yep. You're completely correct. And when I realized that a younger person has a far greater effect, so it's just started raining. It's beautiful. It was when Lady Diana died.
Oh, yeah.
I was absolutely gobsmacked at how the nation was taking it.
Yes.
I had
not just the nation. That was worldwide. That wasn't just the UK.
I mean, I was just looking at the UK TV, so it kind of felt UK-ish, but I think you're correct. I was absolutely blown away at the amount of emotion that you could feel without even turning your TV on or radio. You just feel it in your house. It's just, oh my God.
Right. Yeah.
They were so emotional from every level and every degree and every angle. It was just amazing. So, if she had died like the Queen Mother dies, I don't think you're going to have that kind of experience at all. But because I think she's in her hundreds already. So, it will affect a lot of people, but I don't think the whole world to the same degree,
Right. Yeah, there was definitely a huge outpouring of emotion that happened with that event. And it happened, I think it came, like you say, from a lot of different perspectives, a lot of different reasons, a lot of different motivations. For some people, it was just the loss of who she was because she was such a giving person. For others, it was the horror of the paparazzi chasing her through the highways of France and in the view of many causing the accident. For others, it was the way the royal family reacted to it. For others, it was the way the population reacted in piling up the flowers outside of the gates of Buckingham Palace and the other place. I mean, it was different for every single person.
Yeah. It was an amazing experience. But I wanted to talk about my dad because before, say a week or two before he died, I had this dream with him, and it was a lovely dream, and I had a strong impression that I should speak to my dad. And my sister was going into hospital because he was intensive care. And I said to her, I want to video conference with him. So he saw me, and he had been very out of it, so he didn't really recognize anybody and all the rest of it. But he saw me on the picture on the screen, and he said to me, Oh, King Louis. You know, I've jokingly called myself King Louis for a long time. I've explained that story to you once. And he said, King Louis. And I was like, oh, so cool. What better could he have said? And, you know, that really stuck in my my memory as probably, you know, the last time I chatted to him.
Sure.
And a very special chat to him while he was still just lucid enough.
Right.
To be communicated with. So I was really, really, really grateful that my sister put me on the video conferencing with that little call with him.
That's fabulous.
And I showed him my daughter, and he said Isabel, so he recognized her too. And that's why I stopped just now. My 3-year-old was just bouncing through the door there, completely naked, so I was hoping she didn't come on the video.
Yes, we do try to remain G-rated wherever possible.
But, you know, it was interesting that seeing me triggered his memory and his understanding of who he was speaking to, which was really, really nice. One of my fondest last memories of him will be him calling me King Louis. So
yeah, sure. What a great send-off that is. That's fabulous. I've also I've been intrigued over the years by what psychics tell us about what it's like at the point of transition. What Abraham themselves have told us. I mean, first of all, they have a great little private joke that they tell, which is that they refuse to treat death seriously, so they call it croaking.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that.
They don't want to give it any respect at all because they figure we humans give it far too much respect. We're far too respectful of it, and from their perspective, it's not that big of a deal. It was
very funny, Walt. Somebody was sitting in the hot seat with Abram, and they was saying to Abram, "But you don't understand what it's like to die." And he said, "Who do you think you're speaking to?" Yeah, right.
Oops. Oh, yeah, right. Oh, sorry. Yeah, it's an amazing thing to know that the answers that psychics get. I was one who never really bought into psychic phenomenon for the longest time, and now I'm truly much more buying into it. And the answers that they get, the impressions they get are so consistent from one person to the next. It almost makes you wonder, are they just reading each other's books? Because they're so consistent, you know?
So do you understand why they're consistent?
Well, yeah, they're getting the same answers. They're getting the same impressions. They're getting the same stuff.
Because man has been thinking about it that way, and therefore it's manifesting.
Mm-hmm.
The more and more people think about it, the more it's going to manifest in that way.
Yeah.
You actually think about it. There was this book I read recently, and I was fascinated by it. It's probably the best kind of sci-fi Dungeon and Dragons soldier, you know, kind of old book that I've ever read. The Name of the Wind by Patrick Rufus, a fantastic author. Absolutely amazing. He went to this tribe in the middle of nowhere, and he was learning magic and all the rest of it. But one of the things he did was the magicians could create magic using Allah. They used the word Allah, which is interesting. They used the Muslim name for God. But what he described the word Allah meant for him, and I can't remember because I wasn't reading it, I was listening to it, if it was spelled as Allah or it was spelled differently. It was probably spelled differently. But I just liked the idea that he had linked it to the word Allah because with God. But he was portraying a fascinating concept, is that they could create magic by keeping a visualized image of what they wanted very clearly for as long as they could in their mind, consistently and stably. And that was perfecting your Allah and having strong Allah. Your ability to do step one well so that it manifests.
Yeah. With
enough passion and focus.
Right.
And I really like that from an LOA point of view when you're creating your Allah. I kind of going to use that word now as well.
It's the word of the week. Okay.
So you get your focus right. You're really clear and you hold it for a long amount of time of what you want. And I phoned my wife the other day, and her manager picks up the phone and says, "You know, your wife's a witch," because she heard my voice and she immediately knew it was me. And she said, "Your wife's a witch." I said, "What do you?" No, I said to her, "Isn't it great to be married to a witch?" And she didn't quite know what to say to that, but I knew what she meant. But because my wife said to her, "That's going to be Louis phoning now."
Okay. All right. So that's the qualification for being a witch. I'm glad to hear it. I never knew what the qualification was. So.
Well, a good witch, I suppose.
Right.
She manifests so many things at work that she wants me to go in and do a focus wheel for training the senior staff there. So I'm quite looking forward to going there.
Oh, no kidding.
Yeah.
Oh, that should be fun. Oh, that's good. Something else I wanted to talk about in relation to the passing of our mutual parent, or our relative parents, I should say, which I guess they are relatives now that I think about it. But is that
you're talking
so
about
often,
going back to Abram, or you're talking Abram Hicks?
I guess a little bit of both. We could go off on an interesting rabbit trail there, but no, what I was thinking about is the way people usually interact with and feel about death, and the way they look at it and understand it, and are limited by their own understandings, and end up in grief and in sadness and in sorrow, and often trapped there. And I know this sounds a little bit strange to bring up perhaps to some listeners. I think most of our listeners will understand where I'm coming from here, but I just am, I don't know what the word is, not entranced, but fascinated, I guess is probably the best word. I'm fascinated by how easily we can attach ourselves to that kind of I don't feel good mentality. We're really, really good at it. We pay a lot of attention to it as a society, culturally. We spend a lot of time, a lot of energy on being in that space. Anyone who's ever been to a Catholic funeral, for instance, I mean, the Catholic funeral is all about.
It must have been a big deal.
I've seen it so many times, and I honestly, I'll try to stay away from Catholic funerals. That's usually what I try to avoid going to. But I mean, I just see it over and over and over again. Like, my goodness, people just get so attached on this. What's that?
My dad has just had one.
He just had one. Yeah. But my point, it isn't so much the funeral itself, it's the emotional focus of it that I'm referring to. The emotional focus of sadness. Let's just be so sad. And it's a fascinating choice to make. I would not 20 years ago have thought that it was a choice. Now I understand that it's a choice. And as I understand it to be a choice, I say to myself, well, if it's a choice, that means people are making that choice. Why are they making that choice? It's a really interesting thing to choose. I mean, I can kind of generally sweep it aside by saying, well, we come here to experience the contrast. And sure enough, people do come here to experience the contrast. And yet we linger and we fight for it. We defend it. We go out of our way to protect staying in that really miserable space. And then we develop theories on how to get out of it.
Help you stay there too.
Oh, they help you stay there in a big way. And then we develop theories on how to get out of it. We come up with, the 5-step process of getting through grief. And you have counseling, and you have you have all these theories on how to stay in that place, which is not what they're intended to do, but that's what they're doing, And I think about that and I say, wow. It's really remarkable how, no wonder Abraham turns the whole death thing into a joke by calling it croaking. Mm-hmm. Because there's such a heavy emphasis on it. It's huge, it's gigantic, it's humongous. And because the emphasis is so strong, we have very, very strong experiences with it. Especially earlier on, where perhaps we have we've been here on this planet long enough to kind of forget what we already knew before we came here. So we're immersed in a culture that has this belief system about death and about how when when you're dead, you're dead. I think that's what Anthony Hopkins' character said in a movie he appeared in. He says, "That's what I just believe. I believe that when you're dead, you're dead." It's like, that's it. End of existence. It's all over. and that's kind of the core of it. There's the fear that I'll be dead, and there's the fear that they're dead, and the fear that the death is just, it's endless. It's like, oh my God. But look what we put ourselves through.
But the guy who says when we're dead is actually correct if he's talking from the physical body point of view.
He is.
Yeah.
Yes.
So he's completely correct. So it really depends where your focus is. And I have a lot of these conversations where somebody's focusing on the physical or somebody's focusing on the oneness.
Mm-hmm.
And, I get really annoyed when people start slapping you around when you make a oneness statement and, they're looking from the other side and then they play it the other way around and then they slap you in the face because you're looking at it from the other way around. I just see that so often because I become clearly aware what's going on. I now say, okay, let's put it in context. I'm now going to speak from a oneness point of view and from source and from soul, okay? And this is what I see from that point of view, okay? Now I'm going to talk from the other point of view. This is what I see from the physical time-space reality, and yes, there is time and there's space and there's reality here in a different form. So I'm making it clear which side I'm speaking.
Right.
If you are having conversations, it's really, really worthwhile to be clear about those two because you can get out of a lot of problem argument type situations if you're really clear which one of those you're actually going
Oh, sure, yeah. Well, you can avoid fights that way, no doubt about that. Yeah. I think what I was referring to, though, is the emotional choice, the choice of staying in an uncomfortable emotional state. That's the thing that fascinates me, that people do that.
I hear you, Walt. It's just never been my experience that those around me that have gone through that. I just haven't experienced it. So
okay.
I have seen it on TV and in movies and things like that, but I've never seen somebody be so traumatized by a death that they have, wallowed in it. Even I know people whose children have died. I've just never seen it.
Well, it shows up in a variety of ways, and usually it's well hidden. You have to kind of be open to seeing it before you finally start to see it. My mom experienced it. When my dad passed, we did ask her, if you asked her, within a few months after he passed how she was doing, she was fine in her view. Mm-hmm. But she really wasn't.
Right.
Because there was a lower level that she wasn't really going to, sort of what we'll call a subconscious level, where she was angry and she was frustrated and all that negative stuff, that really uncomfortable stuff was going on and she wasn't acknowledging it.
Do you think a lot of that stuff that people go through, Walt, is related to the lack of understanding and knowing of what is beyond the physical?
I don't know the answer to that. I think that certainly there is a better value in understanding what you just described from the Abraham Hicks perspective than from the religious perspective. Because I think my mom, for instance, believed very strongly. She was a very religious person, and she believed very strongly from a religious perspective in what they'll call the everlasting life perspective. Right. Yeah.
Right. Okay.
She totally bought into that, but that didn't help her to feel confident about it. Mm. The lack of confidence, I think, was where a lot of her anger came from. And it took a number of different forms. My mom, Louise once described my mom really well. She said, my mom lived in order to take care of other people.
Mm, my mother too.
Same thing. Okay. And she took care of my dad right up until the time he passed. And then when he passed, by that time, the three of us were all off on our own lives. My dad was gone. There was nobody left to take care of. Hmm. And it threw her for a loop because her life was about taking care of other people. So now she didn't know how to live for herself. And she ended up making herself miserable as a result because she was so desperate to find that way. In fact, her greatest dream at that point, she had actually was living in a senior center that she had picked. She had been the one who had picked they were going to live there, that she and my dad lived there. He lived there until he passed. And after he passed, she didn't want to live there anymore. Mm. She wanted to, quote, be with family, unquote. And what that meant was she wanted to go take care of family members who didn't want to be taken care of. So we ended up with an interesting arrangement that actually worked out fairly well, where my sister would be my mom's caretaker, or caregiver, actually. And we helped my mom buy a home in Norfolk, Virginia. My sister moved in. It was it dovetailed in many ways in a very good way. My sister really needed a place. She was very happy to take care of my mom and so forth. Louise's comment, again, was very apropos because she said, I don't know how they're going to do it without the two of them killing each other, because they had this kind of an oil and water relationship, but it was a close oil and water relationship. It was part of their dynamic. And sure enough, they ended up, making it work. But it was an interesting thing because my mom was all about, I have to be with family. I have to be with family. And then, of course, she was with family. Mm-hmm. My sister was there every single day. And suddenly it wasn't enough. In other words, what she was hoping to get out of being that caretaker, what my mom was hoping for, was really had nothing to do with family.
Yep.
It had to do with what was going on inside of her, and she didn't know how to handle that.
Mm-hmm. Did she die of just old age or any disease or anything? Or?
Oh, she ended up with cancer, and ultimately, from a physical perspective, we would say the cancer got her.
Yeah, my mom died of rheumatoid arthritis, which is an autoimmune problem, which, of course, is yourself attacking yourself.
Yes.
Which is very, very interesting. All those people who have got autoimmune problems. You start really starting to see, I mean, literally the rheumatoid arthritis over about 15 years killed her step by step by step. It was quite a process to watch from a son's point of view.
Sure. Oh, yeah. Well, I experienced the same thing with my mom in that I mentioned how I knew that she was done. I knew last September that she was done because that was the last time I was actually physically in the same room with her. And Louise and I had gone down to Virginia to my niece's wedding. And after the wedding, obviously we went to visit with Mom and with PJ and so forth. And during that visit, I mean, I could tell my mom was acting up to, my sons, because my brother Mark was also there. My sons are here to visit, so I'm going to be on my best behavior and so forth. And it lasted just long enough to have the interaction with us. And then I could just see her snap back into the mode that she'd been in all along, which was to be miserable. You know, so here she was. She had lived in this miserable. I need to be with family, but I'm miserable. Family showed up. Oh, I'm going to be on my best behavior for about 5 minutes. Great, interact. I'm tired. I'm going back to being miserable. I mean, you look at that, you say, that's somebody who doesn't want to be here. It's really clear. They're done. You know, the best that they can find to do with their lives is to spend 5 minutes, acting good for their sons. That was it. And how do you spend the rest of your time? Well, she spent the rest of her time, you know, huddled up in a chair with her head to one side, watching a television show the same programs over and over again. I mean, there's no desire for life in that choice.
No, it's interesting because there is a very clear choice there, and the choice is to focus on what you don't want, and when you focus on what you don't want, it destroys the physical body.
Yes.
It's a very simple process.
Yeah.
And if people just really understood that, they'd be able to understand how to turn around if they want to. Or they could even accelerate it.
The interesting thing about that phenomenon with the person who's going through it is how they will fight for that position. Like, I mean, there were a few times I would have conversations with her and gently point out to her, you know, by the way, you don't have to be like this. You can actually make different choices, blah, 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 blah. I could have been speaking to a blank wall. It wouldn't have made any difference to speak to her with a blank wall.
Very angry answer, yeah.
Oh, yeah. Well, if I'd really pressed it, I'm sure I would have gotten that. But, you know, over time, you kind of learn how not to push the button too hard. So I didn't push the button too hard because I do love my mom. And I wasn't trying to make her miserable. I was just trying to show her an alternative. But she wasn't having it.
The interesting thing with my dad, Walt, is as you probably saw on Facebook, he died on my birthday.
Oh, I didn't realize that.
Yeah.
You're right. Yeah, that's right. You were having a birthday. Yes, of course. Yeah. I don't know why to make the connection, but yeah.
I mentioned there that, you know, it's my birthday and my dad has chosen this day to die.
Oh, right. You did say that, yes.
And it's really interesting why he chose, out of all 365 days, he chose my birthday to die on. And
well, I had a similar experience because my paternal grandmother also died on my birthday.
Oh, right. Did you have a good relationship with her?
No. I didn't have a bad relationship. It was it was a nondescript relationship in many ways. But yeah, it was strange. And I was only like 8 or 9 years old at the time. So it was, and she died at 12 noon. Right at 12 noon. I don't know what that was about either, but.
There's something about all that, I think.
Yeah. But it's strange to go through that because I'm at 8 or 9, you're having birthday party, right? You have your friends over and so forth. And so we had the birthday party. And then afterward, my dad says, well, I've got something I have to tell you. Your grandmother died. And it's like the world just stopped. Like, what just happened? I was just having a great day and then everything just stopped. What happened?
Walt, my gran died in our house, so she was, out of her flat and into our house for her last days, and she came past me one evening and gave me some Smarties. I said, "Thanks, Gran," and she went off to bed, and a little while later, Dad came to me and said, "Louis, my mom has died, Olive's died, and I just want to show you her." So we walked into the room, and there she was, looking very peacefully, lying on the bed.
Mm-hmm.
"Sure she's dead, Dad?" And he said yes, and it was still one of the best things that he ever did for me. I think it's about the only dead body I've ever seen in my entire life. At least I've seen one. I'm sure many people have seen dead bodies, but I seem to have avoided them for some reason or other. My point of attraction hasn't been to be around those who are dead. My wife, of course, works at a nursing home in palliative care where people go to die. And
she sees that a lot then, yeah.
Every day somebody's seems to have died. But she really seems to cope with it extremely well.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I think people who are called to do palliative care, I truly think it's a calling in that they feel heavily, heavily drawn to do that work. And I can't say that I truly understand the reason. I mean, I can have it explained to me. Patty Framo, who was once one of the co-hosts here, does that kind of work. And she once explained it to me what it was like for her and what the meaning was for her. And I could hear her words and I could, appreciate what she was appreciating because I could appreciate her. But the experience itself, it doesn't resonate with me. And that's what makes it difficult for me to understand. Why do they do that? I don't know. They just do it because they like it.
Yeah. It's been quite interesting because I've been feeling really good since my dad died.
Isn't that an interesting thing?
So alive and so connected.
I have felt the same way since my mom passed.
Yeah. And it's just, am I allowed to feel like this, Walt? I know you can tell me so.
Well, also, it helps that you took a trip to Austria. I took a trip to Cape Cod, so we did have getaway trips. Yeah, that helps an awful lot when you're dealing with something like that. But even so.
I was away in Austria at the time, and right the day after his death, we walked up a river, got to a waterfall, and I took a photo of the waterfall and us there. And I put it onto my family group on WhatsApp, and I said, "Hey guys, this reminds me of Dad because we went hiking and camping all our childhood."
Ah, yes.
And you got some really good positive feedback from those pictures,
Right. Yeah.
And it was just nice, very pleasant.
By the way, there's something I wanted to share too for those who might be going through loss of a loved one. Particularly if it's been difficult. Louise had an experience. I've told this story before, but this seems like a good time to retell this story. She had an experience where, like I said, her mother died when she was 21. And then her father later remarried to a woman named Ruth, who I ended up meeting, of course. And then Ruth passed about two and a half years ago, 2 years, maybe 3 years ago. I'm not sure, but a few years ago. And about 6 months after she passed, Louise was in our living room and she was looking very sad and like she needed help, And so I asked her what was going on, and she said that it kind of hit home that she used to have a phone conversation with Ruth every Wednesday night. That was the night to call Ruth and actually to talk to other people in the family and so forth by phone, but particularly to have the conversation with Ruth. And she realized she was missing those conversations. It had been 6 months, but the pattern was still kind of ingrained in her deeper being, and it was gone and she was missing it. And so she was starting to feel really sad and missing Ruth, and which was really fascinating because early on the relationship was terrible, but they managed to turn it into a good relationship by the end of Ruth's life. And it was a rough thing for Louise. And I didn't know what to do at first. And then I just went with something that came to me. I didn't give it any thought. I just went with it because I was at that time practicing going with what my inner being was telling me. So I said, okay, I'll just go with this. So I went over and I knelt in front of Louise and I took her hands in my hands and I said, I never asked you this question before. What was it that you loved most about Ruth? And I'll tell you, Louise, within 2-3 seconds, her entire disposition changed. Her frown turned into a smile. She started telling me these stories. Mm-hmm. And of course, she's an ex-psychotherapist, so she has the psychology background. She says, I want to congratulate you. You are the first person who has ever figured out how to get through the 5 stages of grieving in one shot.
An amazing story, really is. If you can help somebody go through that, it's a nice place to be able to do that. You really can feel good about it.
Well, it was a wonderful surprise because I didn't expect that. I didn't expect anything. I didn't know what to do to help. And so when I got that reaction and that response, I said, whoa, I've stumbled on something here. Focus on the love. Focus on the love. Stop focusing on the loss. Wow. Who knew that was that powerful?
Focus on what you want, not what you don't want.
That's it. That's it. And
it's such a simple statement from Abraham Hicks and said millions of times, and
I've used that approach, by the way, with other people who have lost loved ones. I mean, absolutely. Louise's sister lost her husband shortly after that. And I used the same thing with Lee. And she was in the same kind of space. She was in that really unhappy space. The funeral was past. It was a Catholic funeral. We were past that stage and we're just kind of sitting in like a reception kind of environment. And you could tell Lee was just kind of drained. And I just sat down next to her and I said, I never really got to know Joe, which was true. I never really got to know him at all. The only time I ever talked to him was at my wedding for about 3 minutes. I never had a chance to talk with him, which sounds strange, I know, but that was just the way it worked out. So I said, I never really got to know Joe. Tell me about Joe. What did you love so much about him? And it was the exact same experience. Her face turned from a frown to a smile. She started relating stories about how he made her laugh and how they met and what happened that led up to getting married and having a family. And her whole demeanor changed in that one conversation. And I said, damn, I'm onto something here. All you have to do is remind people, focus on what you really, really love about the person you lost instead of the loss, and your whole experience changes on a dime.
What you're taking is a good vibrational memory and bringing it into the present, which is raising your vibration. So from a clinical break it down point of view, that's really all that's happening.
Well,
it's a tool.
It is.
Anytime and any day. You can do it right now. Take something you love and bring it to the fore.
It just seems like all isn't a big enough word. You're like, all, that's it? Just all?
Yeah.
But no, you're absolutely right. That's exactly what happens. And in happening that way, I guess it's just one more reminder. We are constantly learning. Those of us who are practicing being deliberate creators, we're constantly learning and reminding ourselves how to shift, how to pivot, and when to pivot, and in what way to pivot to that which we most like, to that which we most prefer, to that which feels good. And every time that we learn more about doing that and have one more experience doing it, it has an impression on us. I think that's really what I'm telling about when I tell that story. It's had a big impression on me in terms of really reinforcing for me, wow, it really does work when we shift our perspective.
You're paving the path to what you want, and you can literally take the blocks of paving, put it down.
Right?
Put it down the way you want, the direction you want.
Like building the road as you're walking.
Yeah. Pave the path.
Yeah, it's pretty cool stuff. Isn't it funny how we look at our lives as we go through a death experience like this, and when we've done the work, we come out of it so easily.
When you have done the work, which means when you have mentally prepared yourself beforehand to have a strong enough vibration to deal with the situation.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's truly astonishing. And I have to say, reassuring.
Absolutely.
It's very reassuring.
You live a completely different life. You're looking at all your problems and all the things that come into your life as challenges, as something that is going to help you know better what you want, and you're going to focus more on that, and it's just going to run forward. And because I'm doing that, I'm now clearer about what I want, and now that I'm clear about what I want, I'm clear about how I'm going to direct my life. Clear about how I'm directing my life, I'm going to have more power in my life. I'm going to have more power in my life. I'm going to have more confidence. If I have more confidence, I can have more direction. I can get more than I want. And I know from Abraham Hicks's teachings that if you want something and you get it, it's the most fabulous thing in anybody's life. And if you want something and don't get it, it's the worst thing in your life. So I'm going to, now more control. I'm going to focus on what I want. I'm going to go for it. I'm going to get it. And I'm going to carve my life and I'm going to enjoy it. And I'm going to have so much fun with this. Let's go.
Yeah, that certainly summarizes what we go through, what we're learning, what we are discovering on this path. And in this path, we are all connected. That's one of the teachings of Abraham. It's one of the basic teachings that most psychics will tell us about the non-physical side of us. We are all connected. We are all source energy. We're all part of this pool. There's something I wanted to talk about along that line, though. And I think maybe this actually does. I thought at first it didn't tie into the conversation, so I wasn't going to bring it up. But now I'm seeing, yeah, there really is a tie-in here. So I was noticing on Facebook today, for my 10 seconds on Facebook, that there was somebody posting in a Neville Goddard group about how I think they were in a relationship and the other person wanted to break up. And so they were trying to understand the breakup from the point of view of what Neville taught, and specifically one particular concept, which is the you pushed out concept. And Neville used the idea of you pushed out as a way of describing, well, if you focus on what it is that you need, the universe, including other people around you, will mirror back to you what it is that you're putting out. So you have a way of reading what's going on, and you can kind of build it that way. The thing is, a lot of people have turned you pushed out into a much bigger thing. They've taken the metaphor way beyond that, to the point where it's almost codependent in the way that they think about it. And that's literally what she was doing. She was treating it as a codependent situation because this boyfriend had said, well, I think we should be seeing other people. And she was all bent out of shape about that. So she was saying, well, so what does this mean? If he is me pushed out, does that mean that I think what he's thinking? Like, oh God, wow, you really wrapped yourself up into a knot here, And it just reminded me of how, first of all, we can get ourselves easily tied up into that knot. But secondly, if we just let go of all of the stuff that we're trying to, we have all these little methods and processes and so forth. We just kind of let go of that and just go back to, what do I prefer? What feels good to me? Let's stay focused there. All that stuff kind of melts away. And yet, as I say that, you know as well as I do, it's very likely that she's not letting go of that stuff. She's going to stay right there on basically the codependent perspective, which is my happiness is dependent upon his behavior. And until he behaves the way that I want him to behave, I can't be happy, And I think about that in terms of the ocean, the liquid form of source energy. And I realized that perspective is taking this liquidity and turning it into a sticky substance that doesn't actually shift anywhere. And now you have all these little gingerbread men all connected together in this rigid form that never ever shifts and never changes, because that provides some degree of security. And wow, boy, what we tie ourselves up into. But that's literally what she's doing. She's trying to make it into a row of gingerbread men. Instead of we are all shifting, we're all changing, we're all connected, but we're also making our own decisions. We're both at the same time, and that's perfectly okay.
I said to quite a few people in my life, I said, love as many people in as many different ways as possible.
Oh.
And I live by that philosophy, and they look at me skewly, and I don't think too many people have really understood what I've said by that, but there's still a very strong idea in life that you should get married and have one partner.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that's a strong thing.
It's a very, very strong thing, and I feel it is incredibly limiting to the amount of possible relationships you can have if you want to tie yourself down. And you don't have to look at it as a tie. It could be such an incredibly powerful, beautiful relationship.
Absolutely.
Nothing else.
You've both chosen it.
That, most people don't actually land up in that situation, to be honest. We would love to say we do, but many of us don't. So, find love wherever you can. You can find it with your children, with your friends, with your neighbors, with anybody. Just love and love and love everywhere, in any way, in any shape and form you can. And I strongly believe in that. But again, I'd like to define love in some shape or form, and it's having alignment. And if you're having alignment with other people, what is more beautiful? It doesn't have to. That's why I think the love as a word is a bit screwy. And it's got too much connotation on lack of love instead of love.
Mm-hmm.
So the word is vastly biased on the negative side rather than the positive side.
Very often.
So, I love the idea that Abram brought up, the idea of alignment and what alignment really is. What makes you happy?
Right.
Yeah. And if you follow that and you get into that happy place, the universal law of attraction is going to bring those other people to you. I've had some incredible relationships with people who have flitted in to my life now and again. It's just been incredible.
I'm going to take that connection you made between love and alignment, and I'm going to take it a step further by referring to an old piece of poetry by the Beatles. And in the end, the love you take is equal to the love you make. Well, I'm going to do a little word substitution. And in the end, the alignment you gain is equal to the alignment you make. And now, all of a sudden, what McCartney and Lennon had to say starts to make a whole lot of sense.
Yeah. A very different perspective, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. It's good. It's just that reminder. I mean, there's another one that happened in my experience lately. What was it? It was somebody talking about, what was it? It was about forgiveness. That's what it was. There's that Hawaiian thing, Ho'oponopono, something like that. I can't think what it's called, but it's basically the idea that Joe Vitale, who was in the Secret, has helped to perpetuate, which is there's a 4-statement sequence that you go through if you want to bring peace to an environment, particularly an environment where there are other people who are out of alignment, not feeling good, and so on and so forth. The 4 statements are, I'm sorry, please forgive me, I love you, thank you. And you're supposed to repeat those over and over again, which there's some merit to it. I can see some merit to it. But the part that really stuck with me about it was the idea of forgiveness, because so often, and I was certainly one of these people, forgiveness is a difficult concept because you're saying, well, please forgive me. Who forgives me? Well, for most people, it's God, please forgive me. Mm-hmm. And that threw me for a while until I understood the Abraham perspective, which is we are source energy. We are God, in a sense. We are the creators. So now I can phrase it as, please let me forgive myself. And when I phrase it that way, now I understand what I'm really saying is, let myself off the hook. Be kinder to myself. Dare I say it, be loving toward myself instead of being so critical of myself. And in the process of doing that, I accomplished the one thing that I want more than anything else, and that is to let go of the stuff I don't want.
Well, Abram's not a big fan of forgiveness. She talks about the AA 12 steps and saying that, one of the 4th step or something is to go to all the people you've offended and ask for their forgiveness or something.
Yeah. And I'm with him on that, by the way.
And they're fully against that concept.
Yeah.
And once you understand the reasoning behind it all, it's very simple, because if you are focusing on what you've done wrong, the universal law of attraction is just going to bring me more.
That's right. Exactly. Yeah.
It's very simple. So yes, you can say, I did this wrong within less than 14 seconds. And then, then all you can say to yourself, you don't have to tell anybody anything. All you have to say is, wouldn't it be nice if I did it better next time?
Yeah. Yeah.
And
that to me is the ultimate, that's truly what real forgiveness is all about. Exactly. Forgiveness has nothing to do with somebody else. Yeah, it has absolutely nothing to do with anybody else. It has to do with you and you. And if you're willing to forgive yourself, what you're really saying is, I'm willing to make another choice. I'm not willing to be stuck on that old choice anymore that I don't like, that I insisted on focusing on for all this time and making myself even more miserable about the fact that I don't like it. Instead, I could say, I forgive myself for that one. I'm just going to let that one go today.
My mentor gave me the Course in Miracles many years ago, and she pointed to the chapter on forgiveness, and it was the only one I ever read.
Okay.
But I remember the first line. It says, there's nothing forgiveness cannot give.
Okay.
And I like that idea. When you forgive yourself, when you focus on what you want, there's nothing that can't heal.
This is true. It is true. Yeah. Interestingly, too, Abraham talks about how our vibration will affect other people. whether positive, negative, good feeling, bad feeling, our vibration will affect other people, and other people's vibration will affect us, to whatever degree that we have not yet taken active control of consciously of our own choices about how we're going to respond in any given situation. So, there is going to be that kind of impact. And they talk about how if you focus on what you like and you focus on being in that high vibrational state of, you're always focused on what you really prefer and what you like and what you enjoy, you're going to have a positive effect on everybody else who you interact with, or even people that you're not interacting with who are just kind of in your general environment. Mm. And that is also, to me, it's one of those things that you can turn that into something codependent really quickly. But if you don't go that far down the path and you just leave it at, yes, I have a positive influence on others, that's really a wonderful thing. Mm. Because that's what the whole Ho'oponopono thing is all about. It's about, I'm going to put out there a better vibration and I'm going to positively impact others. And indeed, that's what has happened. I mean, there are examples. There's one very famous example of a psychiatrist who adopted that methodology, that process, while in charge of a psychiatric institute. And this was an institute that had high levels of violence. It had a really terrible track record. They were thinking about shutting it down. Mm-hmm. It was just a really, really bad situation. And all he did was go into work every day and look at the files of all the inmates and just repeat this pattern, the 4-phrase process over and over again, getting himself into a good vibration as he focused on each one of these. And apparently within like a year or two, all the psychiatric conditions cleared up. The people emptied out. And they did close the thing down, but not for the reason that they had previously had in mind, because they didn't need it anymore.
It was empty.
It was empty. Simply because he changed his vibration and the way he was thinking about the people who were there. Mm. And that, to me, is the great lesson of it. It isn't so much the method. I mean, it is never about any particular method. It's about what you're doing. You're changing your vibration.
Well, yeah. We're going back to the word that this book has coined, Allah. Mm. So when you clear on your focus of what I like about Walt, Walt is going to give it to me.
Yes. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And when I'm clear about what I don't like about Walt, he's going to give it to me.
Isn't that annoying?
So we got to get our Allah focused in the right direction.
Yeah, right.
To what we want.
What do we actually prefer? Yeah. Abraham really had it nailed. That's really what it comes down to. What do you prefer? What do you like? Focus there and you're good.
Use your emotions to guide you, because it'll take you right to the door, to the bottom of the mountain. It'll show you the mountain. It'll help you climb the mountain and get you to fly.
I remember, too, the first time I heard that, I asked myself, well, how are my emotions going to show me that? If I'm feeling bad, I'm feeling bad. So what? What's the point? It didn't seem to me that the emotions are showing me anything. They're not doing anything for me. They're just emotions. Little did I realize that what was actually happening was I was helping to develop my own conscious ability to recognize what it is that I liked.
Nobody was encouraging you to go into revenge, were they?
Well, actually, a lot of people have encouraged that, to be perfectly honest. Culturally, oh yeah.
I don't know if I meet your friends, Walt.
Not so much my friends, just people. You live in society. You look look at the news, look at politics, look at entertainment, look at Facebook, look at all the stuff that's out there. There's a whole bunch of people that are pointing at we got to get back at it. We got to stop this. We got to do something.
If they only know what they really had to do, it would be too simple for them to get their head around. They wouldn't have to wear plaques. They wouldn't have to go jump up and down and do industrial aerobics outside buildings. They wouldn't have to...
Industrial aerobics, I like that.
Did you like that phrase coined in South Africa?
That's a great phrase. I like that.
Phrase.
Yeah, industrial aerobics. That's good.
I'm glad you worked out what it was.
Yeah, that's good. That's really good. I had never heard that one before.
When I first heard it, I was in tears of laughter. But they just have to spend time thinking about what they want. That's it. It's so difficult, Oh my gosh. Mm.
That's fabulous. It beautifully describes what so many people do.
Exactly.
It really does. Talk about getting exercised about something.
Exorcism, yeah.
Exorcism, right. We will exorcise this. I've seen somebody else post something about, I really want to attract driving somebody away. I mean, they literally said it that way.
Yeah.
I want to attract driving someone away. And
you say to them, oh,
okay.
You know how you do that? You just get really focused on where you want to go and they'll vanish.
They often can't even hear that.
Can't hear that.
It's just, wow. Yeah. Just amazing. Actually, I saw somebody saying that, she didn't like insects. She didn't like bugs. So she wanted to make the bugs go away.
Yeah. I've seen that with one of the children. I can't stand these wasps. Get them away. And they were only around her. Everybody else was fine.
Mm-hmm. Yep. I've experienced that myself. I mean, I had a pretty bad phobia of insects, particularly when I was younger. And it took me a long time to just let go of insects. Mm. I mean, not realizing that's what I had to do. I mean, for the longest time, I was trying to do what they were doing. I was trying to push the insects away. Like, go away, get out of here.
Do you know, my sister did an incredible thing for me. She said to me, I said, I'm scared of the dark when I was a little boy. And she said, you know, Louis, I made friends with the dark a long time ago. And I was sitting in my room thinking about this concept. Made friends with the dark? What? And then I started realizing when it's dark, you're protected by the dark. Nobody can see you.
Ah, yes.
I started going through all this and I started conquering my fear of the dark based on that one principle. Then I realized I was scared of rock climbing. So I went to the bottom of a waterfall by myself and climbed up the slippery side of it all by myself. And I couldn't go down again because that was literally too scary. And I was forced to carry on up and up and up. And if I'd fallen, I'd be dead today. So, rock.
So I guess we can infer that you made it.
It's a ghost in front of you, Walt.
Well, I have to say, it's a fantastic simulacrum. That's what it is.
Very powerful ghost.
Quite convincing. Hey, before we go, I want to make sure I remind people about becoming subscribers of the podcast because, first of all, we know about 85 to 90% of our listeners are subscribers, but the other 10 to 15%, we want to encourage them to be a subscriber as well, and it's really easy to do. We are literally on all of the major podcast services, so you can just do a search for LOA Today. But if you really want to make it simple, just go to the homepage of our website, loatoday.net, and you will find instructions right at the top of the page for becoming a subscriber. And then once you subscribe, of course, share the fact with other people you know who you think might be interested so that they can get their daily doses of happy as well, because we want to spread the happiness and spread the joy and spread the ability to choose what it is that you really love in life on a day-to-day, hour-to-hour, minute-by-minute basis to as many people as we can. We want as many people as possible to have that knowledge and that understanding. So, and to experience the joy because we have a lot of fun doing these podcasts. So become a subscriber, share that fact, and feel free also to subscribe to us on YouTube because we live stream these to YouTube as we record them. And you just go there, do a search for LOA Today podcast videos. We'll pop right up, subscribe, and then hit the little bell icon next to us so you can get notified every time that we are live and every time that we post something. And those are our messages for the day. So thank you, Louis, for sharing your experience with me as I'm experiencing my experience of losing a parent. And recognizing that,
too.
and recognizing that, this is actually a good thing. We're going through good stuff here, which is not the way people often think about it. But you know what? We are going through good stuff.
Going through the best. I love it. So I just wanted to say thanks to all the listeners. Take care. And as I always say, carpe diem, go seize the day.
Seize the day. Yeah, I like that phrase. I'm glad that you picked that one up. I remember that Robin Williams used that in
the Dead
that
Poets
movie.
Society.
Dead Poets Society, that's what it was. Yeah, I was trying to remember the title of it.
I made my daughter watch it the other night.
You did? Really?
I love it.
So, carpe diem, absolutely. Thank you very much. Thank you to live stream listeners, and thank you especially to our podcast listeners as well. We will see you all next time here on LOA Today.
I have to say, Walt, Captain, my captain.
Captain, my captain. Absolutely.